The road of reconciliation begins with the acknowledgement of sin. We'll find ourselves often at this stop sign of forgiveness. And ultimately, what we are moving toward is the hope of restoration. That this is ultimately what Joseph was after. He wanted to see his younger brother again. He wanted to hug his father again. He wanted to spare his family from famine. And at the end of chapter 44, Joseph does one final test where he sets up his younger brother and accuses him of stealing. And what happens is the older brother Reuben says, do not punish him, do not do anything to him, I will take his place. Here's what happens in chapter 44, verse 30. So now, if the boy is not with us when I go back to your servant, my father, and if my father, whose life is closely bound up with the boy's life, sees that the boy isn't there, he will die. Your servants will bring the gray head of our father down to the grave in sorrow. Your servant guaranteed the boy's safety to my father. I said, if I do not bring him back to you, I will bear the blame before you, my father, all my life. Now then, please, let your servant remain here as my Lord's slave in place of the boy. And let the boy return with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? No, do not let me see the misery that would come on my father. Now remember, this is the same brother who did not care about the well-being of his father. He did not care about the well-being of Joseph, whom he sold into slavery. And in this moment, something has changed. God has done something in him where he is now saying, no, I don't want to see my father's response to this. I don't want to see my younger brother enslaved. Take me instead. You can take my life. You can enslave me. And this is the moment where Joseph broke and he began to weep so loudly that everyone heard him. And here is what he said in Genesis 45. Then Joseph said to his brothers, come close to me. And when they had done so, he said, I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. Let me ask you a question. Is there something that the Lord is asking of you today? Is there something that the Lord might be inviting you into in this area of reconciliation? And as I have been praying about this and reading through this text, one of the things that stood out to me, that I believe the Lord is saying to some of us today, just as Joseph said to his brothers, he is saying, come close to me. And when his brothers came close, this is when Joseph revealed himself to his brothers. God is inviting you today to come close to him. Do you want to walk in forgiveness? Then come close to him. Do you need to be forgiven for something that you have done? Then come close to him. Do you want to be a community of disciples, multi-ethnic disciples who love one another? Then come close to me. Do you want to begin the process of reconciliation? Then God is saying, come close to me, because here's the thing. It is not by our might, it is not by our power, but it is by his Spirit, that there is none of this that we can do without the work and the power of God. That we need him. You want to be a better person? You can't be a better person away from the work of the Spirit of God. You want to forgive someone who has done you wrong, who has treated you wrong, who has spit in your face, who have made you mad. You cannot do it without the work of the Spirit. And so what God is saying to you today is, will you come close to me? Will you receive the power that I have for you to do this work? If you could do it on your own, you would have done it already. But God is saying, come close to me. This is the work that Jesus did on the cross. He came to reconcile us back to God the Father. He came to allow us to walk toward the hope of restoration, because guess what? In eternity, we will see the fullness of God's glory. We will be captured by His love and by His mercy because of the work of Jesus. Because He walked the road of reconciliation to make a way for us to be restored back to God the Father. This is what I believe the Lord is asking you today. Will you come close to me?